All right, so today I'm going to talk about the wiring for an aftermarket head unit for a 2010 Challenger. This is an SRT8 with a kicker sub in the back. This is a manual. I think that's relevant for the backup camera, which we'll also be talking about. I'm using an ATOTO. I think it's an S8. All of the ATOTOs are pretty similar. I've done a few now. This has been one of the easier ones I've done, specifically since I installed the ATOTO rear backup camera as well, and as opposed to trying to leverage an existing backup camera. As you guys may know, this car is like a boat, and reversing without a backup camera is sort of a praying activity. So I'll talk through the wiring here. Hopefully it's helpful. I didn't find any videos specific to ATOTO, and just sort of talk through what we have connected here. I'll try to be somewhat organized in this approach. So the first wire I want to talk about, this is fed from the backup camera. So I have this specific wire. You can see it's black. This is where the main feed comes through. This goes back through under there, and there's another video on how to wire this, but it goes back under there, under the glove compartment. There's a sort of a panel there that has a couple of clips. You drop it, pretty easy to do. Run the wire there through that panel, that's sort of floor panel. It goes under the back seat. I just sort of wedge it in through there, and then I will after we get through this wiring up here, I'll show you how I have it wired up in the trunk. So this is where it's going to be plugging into the head unit. That one on this specific unit is going to be plugged into RCIN, rear camera in. There's a lot of things going on this one. We won't be using most of these plugs, but I'll talk through the ones we are using. So this rear camera wire, it's going in two different directions up front, I guess, aside from being plugged into the head unit. One, it's this red accessory wire. You can sort of tap this in really anywhere in this accessory string. I have it tapped in coming from the steering wheel control retention that I'll show here in a minute. But so that one you can wire it anywhere, as long as it's most likely a red wire. I haven't seen another color in other vehicles. The other wire coming out of this is the reverse trigger. In the manual in the instructions for this Metra unit, it sort of mentioned, hey, this reverse is not going to work for a manual. I thought I'd wire it anyways. By that I mean it needs to be wired to the reverse lights as opposed to this wire, but I wired it anyways just to see if I would retain that functionality. I did, and it does work. So something in this string of logic is telling this vehicle that it's sending power when I tap on reverse in the head unit. This is a little bit different. Most vehicles I've seen it being pink, but off of this Metra steering wheel control unit, it's actually this purple and white wire that we're tapped into. So this pink reverse trigger is tapped into this purple and white wire off of the steering wheel control unit, and then the red one is coming from the accessory wire, also out of that steering wheel control retention. So those are the only sort of three things coming off of this rear camera. Pretty simple to run. So I'll talk more about this steering wheel control retention. Since I do have the kicker sub, I have this guy. You can sort of do it two different ways. I have it in the amplifier mode, and I'll find the little toggle. Oh, here we go. So there's two ways you can wire this up: amplified or non-amplified. Since I had the kicker sub, I figured I'd run it amplified, and it did end up working. But I'll talk through that wiring here in a second. On this specific ATOTO, there's a sort of you can set it, these three little pins. In the manual, it actually addressed ATOTO specifically, which I was surprised to see. And it gave me this sort of 1 down, 2 and 3 up for the ATOTO, and that did end up working. From there, on this end, this is one of the few units where this 3.5 millimeter actually worked for steering wheel control retention. So from that black wire, I have it coming to this 3.5 which is then plugged into this harness for ATOTO, but I won't jump all the way there yet. So let's talk more about this. I'll sort of group this steering wheel retention into two groups. The first being all of the accessory wiring. So all of that stuff was color to color for this harness. So we'll see things like, let's see if I can find it here. Things like constant, things like accessory power, things like illumination, the ground, obviously black to black. And I'm trying to see what this, I think this pink one, oh, this is phone mute. This one didn't end up being used. But all the accessory wiring, that's all going to be color to color to the harness. Where it deviates is on the actual speaker wiring. So the speaker wiring, since we're using a different sort of, since we're using an amplified setup, this is the way that this thing had to be wired up based on the diagram shown. It was this sort of green and black going to front left on the ATOTO harness. Pure green going to front and left positive. Sorry, it was front and left negative earlier. A solid purple going to right negative. And purple and black going to front right positive. So you don't actually do the speaker wiring color to color the way you might on other units. This guy, yeah, it's all coming from the same harness. It's kind of hard to track here, but that is the main way to get the bulk of this wired up. I'm trying to get multiple views here. I tend to have luck pausing videos when I see others and trying to see where the colors lined up. So here's all the accessory wiring, color to color. Some of these deviated a little bit in size, so I had to use tape as opposed to, or tape and a bigger shrink as opposed to the smaller ones. And this is that rear camera that we saw. It's going pink to purple again. So this is coming from the ATOTO. It's pink on the ATOTO and it's purple on that harness again. So if you remember earlier, this is tapped into that wire we saw coming. I could have tapped this into this pink wire as well, but it was easier for me to get to that purple one instead. So you can tap it anywhere along that line. And that's the bulk of how this is all wired up. A couple of other things that this unit specifically comes with. There's a Wi-Fi antenna here that it's just sort of tacked back there. Not, actually, I think for this unit that is necessary. That's one of the ways it connects via CarPlay. Another thing we have going on here, there should be a GPS somewhere in here. Not sure where the GPS wiring is. Oh, there it is. There's a GPS antenna. This is similar. It plugs into the, there's the purple GPS thing on this ATOTO specifically. This is where the Wi-Fi antenna plugs in. The actual AM/FM adapter, you'll find after you pull everything and you're going to find that the adapter plug fits multiple plugs back here. The one that ended up working was this white one. So then I have this adapter here. I'll link this one too. This is going to be plugging into the actual FM antenna here. And after, I think that's basically all. And then you have your steering wheel controls and your slip protection down there as well. That's all the things you'll have wired back here. It's going to be the FM antenna, the rear camera in, the actual the harness for the ATOTO, which is tapped into both the Metra and the factory harness, the Wi-Fi antenna on this unit, and the GPS antenna. This unit does come with a USB as well. I don't have that ran just yet. I'm not sure if it will, since it does have wireless CarPlay. I've actually had this unit for 2 or 3 years now. I had it in a different vehicle and I've been very happy with it. And I never really used the USB functionality because of that wireless functionality. So I'm not sure I'll run that. I probably won't. So those are all the things we'll have wired back here. In terms of the actual harness, or not the harness, the plastic frame for the head unit, I tried both the Metra and the Scotch. I ended up liking the Metra slightly better. Neither of them quite fit well, mostly because of this this bezel. It's ridged up here and it comes outward, so these buttons end up getting sunk in there, and there's not really a way to get them out unless you have a different head unit. in spite of that, I'm still happy with this head unit. So I don't see myself getting a different head unit solely for that. But plus with the retained functionality of the steering wheels, I don't end up using these buttons all too often anyways. The only buttons you can actually map, which makes sense, is this up, down, usually song forward or reverse or rewind. This one you cannot map, as that's part of the actual instrument cluster. This one you can map to source. That's what I ended up using. These are both part of the instrument cluster, but you can do volume up and down. And again, using this scheme, it worked out nicely. All right, guys, now here at the back of the vehicle, let's talk about how this rear backup camera is wired up. So I'm gonna do my best to flash the camera under here. Hopefully you guys are able to see the 3 wires. If not, I'll post a picture of it. But there's 3 wires coming off of the lead of that backup camera. 2 of them are going to be that yellow and red sort of RCA wires. Those are easy to plug in. They plug in right here to the front end of that lead, and that's going to kick off this black wire, this really long black wire in the kit. That wire is probably, I don't know, 25 feet if I had to guess. That's the one that's ran under this rear floorboard and goes back through the passenger seat and under I'm sorry, not under the passenger seat, to under the rear seat, through the side of the passenger, through the glove compartment that we talked about up front. So this is going to be your main lead all the way up to the head unit. The other wire you'll see here is this ground. I tapped into this per another video I saw. That worked out nicely. I didn't actually terminate it. I just used wire. Probably should terminate that soon. And the third most lucrative one is the tap into the reverse light. I spent a lot of time in here assuming there would be some wiring to the reverse light. I spent a lot of time in here assuming there would be wiring to the reverse light. There's a green and white wire, and the confusing part, which I wasn't able to find, is everybody says, oh, it's the light green and white wire. That's hard when you're only able to find one and you don't have a point of reference to see which is the actual lighter one. So after a lot of digging, I found out that the reverse wire is actually not located under this at all, which makes a lot of sense since the reverse light is actually on the top end of the trunk. Where I did find wiring though is going to be right here. So let me see if I can actually get in there. Get a good shot. That's the wire, that white and green one right there, that you're going to tap into. I just ran some wire. I was able to run it from I started it back there and sort of shimmied it all the way here. So this tap is coming straight basically through this weather stripping straight down here. And then it comes under this board right here. And you can see that is where it taps into the pink wire, which is the trigger for the reverse light on the camera. In terms of where it actually feeds through, there's a vent that I ran it through. I saw that on another video. That worked out nicely. Otherwise, everything's looking good now. All right, so we got everything all hooked up now and buttoned up back together. You can see it fits nice and flush in there. I have the wiring for the reverse backup camera all done as well. So let's take a look and see what it sounds like.
Face Shop Med Spa also does face sculpting. What is face sculpting? Face sculpting.
Radio sounds nice and good. The way this is set up, this is the default. This is an Android Auto operating system, or this is actually just an Android operating system. So this is all customizable. You can add different widgets and add different icons here. This is how you'll set up the steering wheel controls. You can see I've already got mine mapped here. Again, these are all the options. You can map this however you want. You can map one of these to the camera if you'd like, or to the power, mute, or to a phone call. I just sort of mapped it as intuitively as I could. This is all, like I said, customizable. In order to go to CarPlay, At least once it's in this menu, you'll have to click on this car link button. Once you initially link it up, you typically won't have to go through this menu at all. It'll just automatically go to the CarPlay. So let's see if we can get CarPlay playing some music here. Sounds nice and good. You can see it sounds nice and good. I'll talk about the two ways to engage the backup camera. I like to add the backup camera as an icon to this home menu. As I mentioned earlier, I like to toggle it on sometimes, especially when I'm on a hill, just to see what traffic, or if I'm parked somewhere and I want to make sure I can, have some situational awareness, see what's going on behind me. You can add this rear cam here. This will be the view you'll see when you go through it, through the menu. It'll just be this blank view here. And sometimes at hills I'll leave it on and it'll stay on until you back out of it. Let me see if it lets me, if it'll activate. No, I'll have to turn it on. The other way, of course, is to put the car in reverse. So you'll see this is going to be the view when you pop it into reverse. This is at least the factory or the default view. I will say this sort of seeks to emulate a 360 cam. I think it's a great idea. I don't really love the way it actually executes though, so I tend to disable this option, and you can do so in the settings. Otherwise, you'll just have that same screen we saw. The other thing you can enable in the settings is line markers to show you your distance, and you can modify those. You won't be able to here until you have them enabled, but there's a lot of options you can play with here, brightness or contrast and whatnot, shadows. So there's a lot of user interface there, and you can change it to adapt to whatever your needs are. So I would encourage you just to play around with it and see what works best for you. Otherwise, very happy with this installed. I think I'll keep using this head unit for a while, potentially even when I sell the vehicle. So